The holographic image appeared above the United Nations building and everyone stopped talking. The alien stood 9 feet tall with a body made of crystal that reflected light in strange patterns. Behind him floated symbols of 300 different species from across the galaxies. His name was Zexthor and he represented the Galactic Council. People of Earth, he began, and his words were translated into every language at the same time. Your species has been evaluated by the Galactic Council, and we have reached our decision. You must surrender your independence and dismantle your military forces and accept integration into the Council as a client species. You have 72 hours to comply. The assembly hall went completely silent. President Helen Morrison leaned forward in her seat and looked at the leaders from other nations. Then someone in the back of the hall laughed. It was a short, sharp sound of disbelief that echoed through the chamber. The laughter spread like wildfire through the room. Within seconds, the entire assembly was laughing loudly. People wiped tears from their eyes and struggled to breathe. The crystal alien flickered through several colors that showed confusion and anger. You find this amusing, he demanded, and his voice rose above the noise. Commander. Jack Hayes stood up from his seat in the military section. He was a man in his 50s with gray hair at his temples and eyes that had seen many battles. Ambassador, he said while still chuckling, let me make sure I understand this correctly. You are telling us to surrender to you. The Council represents 300 species across 47 galaxies. We have existed for 2 million of your years. You have barely left your own solar system. The choice should be obvious. General Linda Foster, who led the military forces, stood up next to Hayes. Ambassador, with all respect, I think you need to study our history before making this demand. We know everything we need to know about humanity. Zexthor replied coldly. You are a young species, violent and primitive, and you wage war among yourselves over trivial differences. You are exactly the kind of species that requires Council guidance. President Morrison stood from her seat and her face showed no humor now. Ambassador Zexthor, let me be very clear. Humanity declines your offer. We will not surrender and we will not dismantle our defenses, and we certainly will not become anyone's client species. I suggest you report that back to your council. The crystal alien's body flashed red, which meant anger in his species. You are making a terrible mistake. The council has 6,000 warships in this sector alone. Your entire planet could be reduced to ash within hours. We have conquered thousands of worlds. What makes you think you can resist? Jack Hayes smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Because, Ambassador, every single one of those worlds you conquered made one critical error. They fought you alone. Humanity does not do alone. We do together. And we have been preparing for this conversation for longer than you realize. Your 72 hours starts now, Zexthor said, and his hologram began to fade. Choose wisely. When the image disappeared, the assembly hall erupted into activity. President Morrison immediately called an emergency meeting with all the world leaders. Within minutes, secure channels connected every major government on Earth. We knew this was coming, Morrison said to the gathered leaders on the video screens. Operation Unity proceeds as planned. Commander Hayes, you have authorization to implement Protocol Defiance. Hayes nodded seriously. Understood, Madam President. All defense networks are going active. The Council is about to learn something very important about humanity. What is that? Asked Prime Minister Richard Chen. Hayes smiled. That we do not just study military history. We learn from it. And we never ever make the same mistake twice. All across Earth, hidden installations began to power up. Satellites that looked like space debris suddenly came online. On the Moon and Mars and in the asteroid belt, defense platforms that had been hidden for decades revealed themselves. Humanity had been preparing for first contact for over a century, and they had prepared for the possibility that it might not be friendly. The hours ticked by and the tension grew. In the command center, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Hayes watched the displays showing the alien fleet. 6 massive ships held position at the edge of the solar system. Each ship was the size of a city. Lieutenant Greg Palmer, who monitored the sensors, looked up from his station. Sir, they are scanning everything. They know where all our major cities are located. They probably know our exact population. Let them look, Hayes said calmly. The more they scan, the more confident they will become. Confidence leads to mistakes. Dr. Catherine Lopez arrived at the command center. She was Earth's chief expert on alien life and first contact procedures. What do we know about them? She asked. Palmer pulled up data on his screen. Their ships are ancient but well-maintained. Their energy signatures show technology far beyond ours. They have weapons that could devastate a continent from orbit. But Catherine said, leaning forward to study the data, there is something else. They are following a standard procedure. This is how an empire approaches new territory. Polite and formal and backed by overwhelming force. They expect us to surrender without a fight. General Foster entered the command center. Status report, she ordered. Palmer responded quickly. Lunar defense grid is fully operational. All railgun platforms are online and loaded. The Mars garrison reports ready status. Defense clusters in the asteroid belt have armed their weapons. Fleet assets are dispersed and ready for action. What about our actual strength? Foster asked. 73 combat vessels, Palmer reported. 400 fighter craft. 16,000 orbital defense platforms, though half are decoys. 300 ground-based particle beam installations. And Project Hammer is ready pending authorization. Hayes nodded. The Council thinks we are primitive. They think we are divided. They have no idea that threatening Earth is the one thing guaranteed to unite every human being on this planet. President Morrison appeared on the main screen. Commander Hayes, I have just received intelligence reports. The Council is not just here to make us surrender. They want to make an example of us. They want to show the rest of the galaxy what happens to species that develop without Council oversight. Hayes felt cold anger settle in his chest. Then we will make an example right back, Madam President. We will show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity. More. Council ships began arriving and taking up positions around Earth. It was a blockade formation, designed to cut off any escape and provide overwhelming firepower. The aliens were positioning for an assault. Catherine worked at her computer terminal. I have embedded a program in their translation protocols, she said. Nothing harmful, but it is broadcasting human military history directly into their systems. Every war, every battle, every strategy we have ever used. I want them to see exactly what kind of species they are threatening. Will it make a difference? Foster asked. Probably not to the Council leadership, Catherine admitted. But to the individual ship captains and the soldiers and the ones who will actually have to fight us, maybe it will. Fear is universal, General. Once they understand what we are capable of doing to each other, they might realize what we will do to them. Hayes looked at the countdown timer. 48 hours remained until the ultimatum expired. Across Earth, most people went about their daily lives unaware of the threat above them. The governments had agreed to maintain calm and avoid panic. But in military bases and research facilities and command centers around the world, humanity prepared for war. They think we are primitive, Hayes said quietly. They think because we are young we are weak. They are about to discover that youth does not mean weakness. It means we still remember how to fight for survival. Foster stood beside him, looking at the display of the Council fleet. In all of human history, we have never faced an enemy like this. Never fought for stakes this high. Hayes nodded. Which means we cannot afford to lose. And we will not lose. Because that is what humans do. We survive, we adapt, we overcome. The Council made one fatal mistake. What mistake? Catherine asked. They gave us 72 hours to prepare, Hayes replied. That is 72 hours for every human on Earth to realize we are not alone in the universe. 72 hours for every person to understand that aliens are real and they want to conquer us. 72 hours for 8 billion humans to get angry. And nothing in the universe is more dangerous than angry humans, Foster added with a grim smile. The preparation continued through the night. Weapons were loaded. Systems were tested. Plans were reviewed and refined. Humanity stood on the edge of its first interstellar war, and they stood together as one species united against a common threat. The Galactic Council had demanded surrender. Humanity had laughed. Now they would show the Council why that laughter should have been taken as a warning. The Council made their move with 36 hours left on the clock. Commander Hayes was reviewing defensive positions when alarms rang throughout the command center. Contact, shouted Lieutenant Palmer. Multiple Council ships breaking formation. They are moving toward the moon. General Foster rushed to the tactical display. They are going for the moon, she asked. No, ma'am, Palmer corrected himself. They are heading for our communications satellites in lunar orbit. They are trying to blind us before the main attack. Hayes smiled coldly. They are testing our response. They want to see if we will fight over satellites before they commit to a full assault. Give me firing solutions on those ships. Luna Defense Grid, you are authorized to engage. On the far side of the moon, where the Council ships could not observe directly, massive railgun installations turned toward their targets. These were not the primitive chemical rockets of the past century. These were electromagnetic accelerators capable of firing tungsten rods at tremendous speed through space. Firing, announced Lieutenant Sarah Martinez from the Lunar Command Post. The railguns fired silently in the vacuum of space. Tungsten rods, each weighing several tons and moving at incredible velocity, crossed the distance to the Council ships in seconds. The aliens had shields that could deflect most energy weapons. But kinetic weapons were different. They delivered pure force, and the Council shields had not been designed for the sheer impact that humanity could generate. The first rod struck a Council cruiser in the middle section. The shield held for a fraction of a second before it failed completely. The tungsten rod punched straight through the vessel, passing through decks and hull like a bullet through paper. The ship's reactor went critical, and the cruiser vanished in a brief, brilliant flash of light. "Target destroyed," Martinez reported, and her voice stayed calm and steady. Tracking remaining contacts. The other Council ships scattered, and their neat formation broke apart as they tried to avoid being hit. 2 more were struck before they managed to retreat back to the main fleet. One limped away with massive holes in its hull. The other simply disappeared when its reactor exploded. In the command center, there was a moment of complete silence. Then Palmer spoke, and his voice was filled with awe. "Sir, we just destroyed 3 Council warships. Just like that. They will not make that mistake again," Hayes said grimly. "They thought their shields would protect them from everything. Now they know better." General Foster sent a message to the Council fleet. "Text only and keep it simple. This is your final warning. Leave our system immediately, or the next attack will be much larger." The response came within minutes. Ambassador Zexthor's face appeared on the main screen, and his crystal body flashed through angry reds and purples. "You have committed an act of war against the Galactic Council," he shouted. "Your planet will be sterilized for this crime. You attacked our infrastructure," Hayes replied calmly. "We defended it. If that is an act of war, then you started it, Ambassador. I am giving you one chance to withdraw peacefully. Take it or face the consequences. The Council does not retreat from primitives," Zexthor screamed. "Our fleet will reduce your planet to molten rock. Then come and try," Hayes said, "and cut the transmission. They are going to hit us with everything they have," Foster said quietly. "Are we ready for this?" "As ready as we will ever be," Hayes answered. "All units go to battle stations. This is not a drill. Humanity's first interstellar war begins right now." The Council fleet advanced in a massive wave. 6,000 warships moved in coordinated groups that had been perfected over millions of years. They had learned from their first mistake. Their shields were reinforced and point defense systems were active, and they used evasive maneuvers to make targeting more difficult. "They are spreading out," Palmer observed. "Looks like they plan to hit us from multiple directions at the same time." Catherine Lopez watched the display with fear in her eyes. "Jack, even with our advantages, those are impossible odds." "Then we change the odds," Hayes replied firmly. "Execute Project Hammer on my mark. All defense platforms hold your fire until they are in optimal range. Make every shot count, because we will not get second chances." The Council fleet closed to firing range and opened fire with everything they had. Energy weapons cut through space and targeted Earth's orbital infrastructure. Satellites exploded into debris. Defense platforms were vaporized instantly. Dozens of human installations were destroyed in the first massive volley. But humanity's defenses were layered and redundant by design. For every real installation, there were 5 decoys scattered throughout orbit. The Council wasted enormous firepower on holographic projections and electronic ghosts that looked real on their sensors. "Now," Hayes commanded. "Hammer execute immediately." Hidden throughout the asteroid belt, installations that had been disguised as simple mining operations came online all at once. They were not mining ore or water ice. They had been processing raw materials into ammunition for months. The entire asteroid belt had been turned into one massive weapons platform. Thousands of projectiles launched simultaneously from hidden catapults, rocks and ice chunks and refined metal slugs and anything with mass. They had been accelerated by magnetic launchers and aimed with precision by Earth's defense computers. The projectiles were not extremely fast by military standards, but they did not need to be. They just needed to be numerous and aimed at the right trajectories. The Council fleet suddenly found itself flying into a wall of death. Ships were forced to divert power to shields and to maneuver frantically. and to shoot down projectiles with point defense weapons. Their organized advance stalled completely as they dealt with the unexpected threat from an unexpected direction. Mars Garrison UR. Weapons-free Foster commanded over the communications net. On Mars, massive laser batteries powered by the colony's fusion reactors opened fire. These were not small handheld weapons. These were continuous beam installations capable of focusing enormous power into tight, coherent streams. The beams took time to reach their targets across the vast distances, but the targeting computers had calculated everything perfectly. Council ships began to die in new ways. Not in massive explosions, but in cascading system failures, as lasers burned through armor and critical components. Ships lost power and lost maneuvering capability, and drifted helplessly as their crews struggled desperately to respond to damage they had never anticipated in their worst planning. Scenarios. Earth-based particle. Beams are firing, Palmer reported with growing excitement in his voice. From hidden installations across the planet, particle accelerators fired streams of charged particles up into orbit. The beams curved along Earth's magnetic field lines and were guided by carefully positioned satellites that acted as focusing mirrors. More council ships were hit, and their shields were overwhelmed by weapons that operated on principles their defenses were never designed to counter. Fleet assets are engaging, Martinez added from her position on the Moon. 70. 3 human warships emerged from concealment all across the solar system. They had been hiding in the Moon's shadow and in the Lagrange points and anywhere the Council sensors might have overlooked them. They were not as large or as powerful as Council vessels, but they were fast and maneuverable and crewed by humans who had grown up watching war movies and playing combat simulations. The human fleet did not engage in neat formations. They swarmed like angry hornets, using tactics more like fighter pilots than traditional naval commanders. They fired from unexpected angles and used the Moon and Earth as cover and concentrated their fire on already damaged Council ships to finish them off quickly. Status report, Hayes demanded as he watched the battle unfold on multiple displays. Council fleet is in complete disarray, Palmer reported, and he could barely contain his excitement. They have lost approximately 400 ships already. They are pulling back to regroup and reassess. Our losses, Hayes asked quietly. Significant, Palmer admitted, and his excitement faded. We have lost 22 warships and 30% of our orbital infrastructure, and one of the Mars laser batteries was destroyed by return fire. But sir, we are still in the fight and they are retreating. Hayes allowed himself a small, tight smile. They expected to sweep through us like we were nothing. Instead, they hit a brick wall made of human stubbornness. Let's make sure that wall holds. All units establish defensive perimeter. Prepare for their counterattack because they will be back. Ambassador Zex Thor's face appeared again on the screen. You fight better than we anticipated, he admitted, and his crystal structure pulsed with cautious yellow colors. But you cannot win this war. We have thousands of ships in reserve throughout the galaxy. Your resistance only delays the inevitable outcome. Maybe, Hayes replied calmly. But here is what you need to understand, Ambassador. Every human on this planet is watching this battle right now. Every human in the solar system knows what is happening. You are not fighting 73 ships anymore. You are fighting 8 billion humans who have just realized that aliens are real, and they are hostile and they want to conquer us. You think you have seen our military strength today? You have not seen anything yet. Every factory on Earth is being retooled for war production. Every scientist is working on new weapons. Every citizen is volunteering for defense forces. You wanted to make an example of us. Congratulations. You have united humanity like nothing else in you. 3 weeks into the siege of Earth, Commander Hayes looked exhausted. The dark circles under his eyes had grown deeper, and he had lost weight from the constant stress. But his eyes remained sharp and focused as he studied the tactical displays in the command center. They are getting smarter, General Foster observed while standing beside him. They stopped trying to overwhelm our defenses with brute force. Now they are being careful and methodical about every move. That is because they finally studied our military history, Catherine Lopez said from her workstation. My virus worked too well. They have analyzed everything from ancient battles to modern warfare. They know how we think now, and we know how they think, Hayes countered. That is why this next phase is absolutely critical. Lieutenant Palmer, what is the status on Operation Trojan Horse? Palmer looked up from his console with a slight smile. Package is ready, sir. The Council has no idea what they are about to receive as a gift. The package had taken 2 weeks of careful planning and preparation. During the ongoing skirmishes between fleets, a heavily damaged human frigate called the Defiance had been abandoned by its crew and left drifting in space. The Council had naturally towed it back to their fleet for examination because they were eager to understand human technology and find weaknesses. What they did not know was that the Defiance was a carefully prepared trap, hidden deep in the ship's reactor core and concealed by radiation that made detailed scanning nearly impossible. Was a device that human engineers had developed specifically for this scenario. It was not a bomb in the traditional sense. It was an electromagnetic pulse generator powered by antimatter and capable of creating a cascading shutdown of any electronic system within an enormous radius. Countdown, Hayes asked quietly. 16 minutes, Palmer replied. The Council's technical teams are aboard the Defiance right now. They have connected it to their main analysis network to download all our data. Once the EMP triggers, it will spread through their entire fleet. Coordination system like a virus, and our fleet is hardened against the pulse. Hayes confirmed all ships have been shielded and protected, Palmer answered. They will be completely unaffected by the electromagnetic pulse. Foster nodded with grim satisfaction. Once their coordination goes down, we hit them with everything we have left. They will not be able to organize a defense or coordinate their shield systems properly. Catherine looked troubled and worried. Jack, there will be alien crew members on that ship when it triggers. They will be killed instantly. I know, Hayes said quietly, and his voice carried the weight of the decision. War's never clean, Catherine. They made the choice to attack us first. Every casualty on both sides is their responsibility, not ours. The minutes ticked down slowly. Across the entire solar system, human forces waited with weapons armed and crews at their battle stations. The Council fleet, which now numbered over 5,000 vessels after reinforcements, had arrived, maintained their siege positions around Earth. They had learned to respect human defenses, but they remained confident that time and numbers were on their side. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Detonation in 5 seconds, Palmer counted. Down. 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark. On the tactical display, a pulse of invisible energy erupted from the Defiance. It washed over the Council fleet like a silent wave spreading at the speed of light. For a brief moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then one by one, the Council ships began to drift aimlessly. Their running lights flickered and died. Their shields collapsed completely. Their weapons went silent and dark. It worked, Palmer said, and his voice was filled with disbelief. Their entire fleet is completely dead in space. All units execute assault pattern, Delta, Hayes commanded, and his voice remained calm despite the adrenaline pumping through his system. This is our only chance. Make every shot count. The human fleet struck like wolves attacking wounded prey. 51 warships, which was all that remained of Earth's mobile forces, accelerated toward the helpless Council vessels. Missile batteries fired continuously. Railguns spoke with deadly precision. Laser beams carved through the void. The Council ships had been designed for centuries of reliable operation, but they had never been hardened against electromagnetic warfare. Their systems were rebooting slowly, but it would take several precious minutes. Minutes they did not have. Human missiles struck home and detonated against hulls that no longer had any shield protection. Railgun projectiles punched through armor like it was tissue paper. Laser beams cut through critical systems and power conduits. The Council fleet, which had been so dominant just moments before, was being torn apart systematically. Target the command ships first, Foster ordered. Cut off their leadership and chain of command. The massive Council dreadnoughts, which carried the fleet admirals and senior commanders, became priority targets. Human ships swarmed them like wolves wagging wounded buffalo. The mighty vessels, which were each capable of destroying entire continents, died under concentrated fire from multiple angles. Ambassador Zexthor's emergency transmission came through on audio only, because his holographic projectors were apparently offline. Cease fire immediately, he begged. We surrender unconditionally. Stop this slaughter, please. Hayes exchanged quick glances with Foster and President Morrison, who had been watching via secure video link. Should we accept? Morrison asked. Madam President, if we let up now, they will just regroup and come at us again with even more forces, Foster advised. They need to understand that attacking Earth was the biggest mistake their empire has ever made in 2 million years. Hayes nodded slowly in agreement, then opened the communication channel. Ambassador, I am afraid we are having some technical difficulties on our end. Your transmission is breaking up badly. Could you please repeat that message? Zexthor's voice was desperate and filled with panic. I said we surrender completely. We will withdraw from your system immediately. Just please stop killing us. I am sorry, Ambassador, but you are still breaking up on our receivers, Hayes said calmly. Did you say you want to discuss unconditional surrender terms? Because that is the only conversation I am interested in having right now. There was a long pause filled with the sounds of explosions in the background. Then Zexthor spoke again and his voice was utterly defeated. Yes, unconditional surrender. We will agree to whatever terms you demand. Just please no more death and destruction. Hayes gave the signal and the human fleet immediately ceased fire. Across the battlefield, Council ships drifted in space. Many were damaged beyond repair. Many were completely destroyed. Out of the 5,000 ships that had been in the fleet, fewer than 3,000 remained even partially operational. This is Commander Jack Hayes of Earth Defense Command. Hayes broadcast on all frequencies. By authority of the United Nations and the Unified Government of Earth, I accept your surrender. All Council vessels will immediately cut all weapon systems and prepare to be boarded by our inspection teams. Any ship that fails to comply or attempts to flee this system will be destroyed without warning. You have 5 minutes to signal compliance. One by one across the vast battlefield, the Council ships signaled their compliance. Their few remaining weapons went cold and offline. Their reactors dropped to minimum power. The great fleet that had come to conquer and enslave Earth had been broken completely. In the command center, there was stunned silence for several long moments. Then Lieutenant Palmer spoke and his voice trembled slightly. Sir, we actually did it. We won against impossible odds. We survived the first major battle, Hayes corrected him. The war is not over yet. The Council still has thousands of ships in other sectors of the galaxy. They could send massive reinforcements. Let them try, General Foster said with grim satisfaction in her voice. Every species in the galaxy is going to hear about what happened here today. The mighty Galactic Council defeated by a species they called primitive. That is going to change everything. Catherine was already working frantically at her console. I am picking up transmissions spreading through the Council's network. Every client species and every member world is hearing about what happened here. The news is spreading like wildfire. What are they saying? Morrison asked urgently. Catherine smiled despite the exhaustion on her face. They are asking how we did it. They are asking if humanity will help them fight for freedom. Some of them are already talking about independence movements. Jack, I think we just started something much bigger than a simple war. We might have just sparked a revolution across the entire galaxy. Hayes sat down heavily for the first time in many hours. He was suddenly aware of how utterly exhausted he felt. Then we had better be ready for what comes next. Because if the Council is willing to fight this hard to keep one species in line, they are going to bring everything they have against anyone who rebels. Maybe, Foster said thoughtfully. But now they know something they did not know before. They know that humans fight back hard. They know we can win against overwhelming odds. And more importantly, every enslaved species in the galaxy knows it too. The holographic display showed the disabled Council fleet. It showed the wreckage of hundreds of destroyed ships floating in space. It showed the triumphant human vessels patrolling among the defeated enemy. It was a sight that would be recorded in history books for thousands of years to come. Earth had defended itself against an ancient empire. Humanity had won when victory seemed impo. 6 months after the Great Battle, Commander Jack Hayes stood on the observation deck of humanity's Reach, which was Earth's first true interstellar diplomatic vessel. Through the massive windows, he could see representatives from 47 different alien species, gathered for what the news networks were calling the Summit of Free Worlds. Never thought I would live to see this day, General, Linda Foster said as she joined him at the window. She had been promoted to Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces, which was a position that now carried enormous weight in galactic politics. Neither did I, Hayes admitted quietly. When the Council showed up 6 months ago demanding our surrender, I figured we would either die fighting or end up as slaves. I never imagined we would be hosting a summit of rebel species planning to overthrow an empire. The past 6 months had been chaotic beyond description. After Earth's stunning victory, the Council had attempted to negotiate a peace treaty that would preserve their authority over the galaxy. Humanity had refused every compromise. Instead, President Morrison had gone on the offensive and used captured Council communications equipment to broadcast. the complete truth about the battle to every corner of the known galaxy. The response had been overwhelming and immediate. Dozens of species that had been under Council rule for thousands of years reached out to Earth with secret messages. They wanted to know how humanity had won against such overwhelming odds. They wanted to learn human tactics and strategies. Most importantly, they wanted their freedom back. Catherine Lopez approached them carrying a digital tablet. She had been appointed as Earth's chief xenodiplomat and was responsible for managing humanity's rapidly growing relationships with the coalition of free worlds. The Council has sent another delegation, she reported. This time they are actually asking for a formal treaty. They are willing to recognize Earth's complete sovereignty and the independence of any species that chooses to leave the Council. What is the catch? Foster asked with deep suspicion in her voice. They want humanity to stop providing military training and advanced technology to rebel species. They are terrified we are going to arm the entire galaxy against them. Hayes laughed softly. They are not wrong to be afraid. How many species have we trained so far? 32, Catherine replied, and 20 more have formally requested our assistance. Jack, we are accidentally becoming the military academy for the entire galaxy. Every species that wants to throw off Council rule is sending their best soldiers and brightest minds to Earth to learn human warfare. Accidentally, Foster raised an eyebrow. Catherine, we are doing exactly what we set out to do. We are showing the galaxy that the Council is not invincible. We are giving oppressed species the tools and knowledge they need to defend themselves. I know, Catherine said with concern in her voice. But we need to be very careful. We are changing the balance of power across the entire galaxy. That makes us a target not just for the Council but for anyone who benefits from the current system of control. A young officer named Lieutenant Kevin Morris approached and saluted sharply. Commander Hayes, the summit is about to begin. The delegates are gathering in the main conference hall. Hayes nodded. Thank you, Lieutenant. Let's go make history then. The conference hall was truly impressive. It was a massive chamber that had been constructed specifically for this historic summit. Representatives from 47 different species filled the enormous room. Some looked humanoid while others were utterly alien in appearance. They represented worlds spanning dozens of different galaxies, and each one was seeking independence from the ancient Council. President Morrison stood at the central podium, flanked by Hayes and Foster. Representatives of the free world, she began, and her voice was carried by translation devices to every being in the room. We stand at a crossroads in galactic history. 6 months ago, Earth faced total annihilation. We were outnumbered and outgunned and facing an enemy that had conquered thousands of worlds over millions of years. By every logical calculation, we should have lost. But we did not. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathered delegates. We did not lose because we refused to accept defeat. Morrison continued. We did not lose because we prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. And we did not lose because when the moment came, every human on Earth stood together as one. That unity and that refusal to surrender is what saved us, and it is what I believe can save all of you. A delegate from the Krynos, which was a species that resembled large insect creatures, stood up. The Council has ruled for 2 million years. They have technology we cannot comprehend, resources beyond measure. How can we possibly hope to defeat them in battle? Hayes stepped forward to address the question. With respect, delegate, you are asking the wrong question. You are not trying to defeat the Council in total war. You are trying to convince them that conquering you costs more than it is worth. That is what Earth did. We made ourselves too expensive to conquer. But you had advanced weapons, another delegate protested loudly. My people barely have space travel capability. How can we hope to defend ourselves against warships? You do not need advanced weapons, Foster interjected firmly. You need the will to fight and the intelligence to fight smart. Earth will provide basic training and defensive tactics and simple but effective technology to any species that wants it. But the most important thing we can teach you is this simple truth. Never surrender. Make any aggressor pay heavily for every inch of territory. Make the cost of conquest so high that they decide it is simply not worth the effort. An elderly delegate from the Sarin, which was a species that looked almost human except for their metallic silver skin, stood slowly. Commander Hayes, you speak of resistance and making conquest expensive. But the Council has already conquered my world 3,000 years ago. My people have been under their oppressive rule ever since. What hope is there for us now? Hayes met the delegate's eyes directly. Every empire in history falls eventually. The only question is whether you will be ready when that moment comes. And based on everything we have seen in the past 6 months, I think the Council's days of absolute power are numbered. They relied entirely on reputation and fear for control. We shattered that reputation completely. Now every species in the galaxy knows the Council can be beaten. The very moment you start believing you can be free, you are already halfway there. The summit continued for 3 intense days. New alliances were formed between species that had never met before. Training schedules were established. Earth committed to providing military advisors and defensive technology and strategic guidance to any species seeking independence. In return, the free worlds agreed to mutual defense pacts and the sharing of resources and technology on the final day as the delegates prepared to return to their distant homeworld's ambassador. Zexthor requested a private meeting with Hayes and Morrison. The Council representative looked dramatically different from their first encounter. His crystalline structure was dimmer and less confident than before. "You have won," Zexthor said simply. "The Council cannot maintain control when species know they can successfully fight back. Our empire is collapsing from within. Worlds that have been loyal for thousands of years are now openly questioning our authority. You have destroyed everything we built over millions of years." "No," Morrison replied firmly. "We exposed what you built. An empire based purely on fear and domination is not civilization. It is tyranny. You did this to yourselves by refusing to treat other species as equals." "What happens now?" Zexthor asked, and his voice carried genuine fear. "Will you destroy the Council entirely?" Hayes shook his head. "We are not interested in conquest or revenge. We just want to be left alone to live our lives, and we want every other species to have that same choice. If the Council can transform itself into an actual federation of equals, there might be a place for you in the new galactic order. But if you continue trying to dominate others by force, you will find that Earth and all our allies will stand firmly against you." Zexthor's structure pulsed with colors that the translation software identified as resignation and acceptance. "I will convey your message to the Council leadership. We have much to consider and discuss." After the ambassador left, Morrison turned to Hayes. "Do you honestly think they will change their ways?" "Probably not," Hayes admitted. "Empires rarely give up power willingly, but it does not matter anymore. The galaxy has fundamentally changed. Species know they can be free now. They know they can defend themselves. The Council's power was based entirely on everyone believing they were invincible. We proved they are not. That knowledge cannot be erased." Foster joined them carrying a glass of champagne. "I just received the final count. 73 species have formally requested military cooperation agreements with Earth. 73. We went from defending one single planet to being the military trainers for most of the galaxy. It is an enormous responsibility," Catherine said, appearing with her own glass. "We need to be extremely careful that we do not become what we fought against. We cannot be another empire even if we call ourselves liberators," agreed, Morrison said. "That is why we are setting up the framework for a true coalition of equals. Equal partners, not overlords and subjects. Every species makes their own decisions. We just provide the tools and knowledge to defend those decisions." Hayes looked out at the stars visible. 1 year after the historic battle that changed everything, Commander Jack Hayes stood in the newly established Galactic Defense Academy on Earth. Around him, hundreds of alien cadets from dozens of different species were learning human military tactics and strategy. Some were practicing hand-to-hand combat, while others studied space warfare simulations. The sight still amazed Hayes even after 12 months. "This is incredible," General Linda Foster said as she walked beside him through the training facility. "A year ago, we were fighting for our survival. Now we are teaching the galaxy how to fight for freedom." Hayes nodded slowly. "The Council sent another message this morning. They want to negotiate again. They are offering us a seat on their ruling council if we stop training rebel forces." "What did President Morrison say?" Foster asked. "She told them exactly where they could put their offer," Hayes replied, with a slight smile. "We did not fight for survival just to join their broken system. We fought to prove that freedom is worth defending." Catherine Lopez hurried toward them carrying her ever-present tablet. Her role as chief xenodiplomat had only grown more important as more species joined what was now being called the Free Worlds Alliance. "Jack, Linda," she called out. "We just received word from the Krenos homeworld. They successfully repelled another council attack. This time they did it without any human ships. They won completely on their own. Hayes felt a surge of pride. That is exactly what we have been working toward. They do not need us to fight their battles. They just needed to learn that they could fight. The news gets better, Catherine continued. 15 more species have formally declared independence from the Council in the past month alone. The Empire is fracturing faster than anyone predicted. Intelligence reports suggest the Council has lost effective control over nearly 40% of their former territory. How is the Council responding, Foster asked with concern. They are pulling back their forces to protect their core worlds, Catherine replied. They simply do not have enough ships to enforce control everywhere at once. Every time they crush a rebellion in one sector, 3 more pop up somewhere else. A young alien cadet approached them nervously. The cadet was from the Valeth species, which had been slaves under Council rule for over 5,000 years. Commander Hayes, the cadet, said in careful English, "I wanted to thank you personally. My people are free for the first time in our recorded history because of what Earth did. We will never forget this gift." Hayes placed a hand on the cadet's shoulder. "You do not need to thank us. Freedom is not a gift we gave you. It is a right you took back for yourselves. We just showed you it was possible. Everything else you did on your own." The cadet saluted in the human style that had been adopted by many Free Worlds forces and returned to training. Hayes watched the young alien go and felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders once again. Lieutenant Kevin Morris appeared with an urgent expression. "Sir, we have a situation developing. Long-range sensors have detected a massive Council fleet assembling near the border of their core territory. Intelligence estimates over 10,000 warships." Foster's expression hardened immediately. They are preparing for a major offensive. They want to make one massive push to reclaim their lost territory and re-establish their dominance. Hayes studied the data on Morris's tablet. "How long until they are ready to move?" "Best estimate is 3 weeks, Sir," Morris replied. "They are gathering forces from every remaining sector under their control." "Then we have 3 weeks to prepare," Catherine said quietly. "Can the Free Worlds Alliance stand against a force that size?" Hayes looked at the training grounds where alien cadets were learning to fight. "A year ago, I would have said no. But these species have learned fast. They have learned that working together makes them strong. They have learned that determination can overcome superior numbers. They have learned to fight like humans." "We need to call an emergency session of the Alliance Council," Foster said. "Every member species needs to contribute forces. This will be the real test. If we can survive this counterattack, the Council will be finished as a dominant power." Over the following days, the Free Worlds Alliance mobilized for war on a scale never seen before. Species that had been enemies for centuries put aside their differences to face the common threat. The Krynos contributed their heavily armored battlecruisers. The Saren provided fast attack ships. The Valeth offered their expertise in electronic warfare. Dozens of other species brought their unique strengths to the Alliance. Earth contributed not just warships, but something more valuable. They shared every piece of military knowledge humanity had accumulated over thousands of years of warfare. Tactics from ancient Earth battles were adapted for space combat. Strategies from historical wars were modified for galactic scale. The human gift for creative violence was passed on to species that had forgotten how to fight. Commander Hayes found himself appointed Supreme Commander of the Allied Defense Forces. It was a position he had never wanted but could not refuse. In the command center of humanity's reach, he coordinated forces spread across dozens of star systems. The holographic displays showed the deployment of over 8,000 Allied warships facing the approaching Council Armada. President Morrison appeared on the main screen. "Jack, the entire galaxy is watching this. If we lose everything we have built over the past year, we'll collapse. The Council will crush every rebellion and tighten their control even more than before. Then we will not lose," Hayes replied with quiet confidence. "The Council is making the same mistake they made when they attacked Earth. They think superior numbers guarantee victory. They have not learned that fighting for freedom makes you stronger than fighting to maintain control." The Council fleet crossed into Free World's territory exactly 3 weeks after they began assembling. 10,000 warships advanced in perfect formation. It was an overwhelming display of power designed to terrify the rebel forces into surrendering without a fight. But the Free Worlds Alliance did not surrender. They did not retreat. They did exactly what humanity had taught them to do. They fought smart. The Allied forces did not meet the Council fleet in direct battle. Instead, they used hit-and-run tactics that had been refined over centuries of human guerrilla warfare. Small strike forces attacked supply lines. Hidden missile platforms fired from unexpected angles. Electronic warfare specialists disrupted Council communications. The massive enemy fleet found itself being nibbled to death by 1,000 small cuts. Hayes watched the battle unfold across multiple star systems. "The Council expects us to fight them on their terms," he said to his staff. "We are fighting them on our terms instead. We are using every advantage we have. Speed over strength, intelligence over firepower, unity over numbers." Days turned into weeks as the battle continued. The Council fleet became frustrated and disorganized. Ships were constantly under attack from directions they did not expect. Supply lines were cut. Communications were jammed. The perfect formation dissolved into chaos as individual commanders lost contact with their superiors and began making their own decisions. Then Hayes gave the order for the main Allied fleet to engage. 8,000 Allied warships struck the disordered Council forces from multiple vectors simultaneously. The battle was fierce and costly. Thousands of ships on both sides were destroyed. Space became filled with debris and the flashes of exploding reactors. But the Council fleet had already been weakened by weeks of harassment. Their coordination was broken. Their morale was shattered. When the Allied forces hit them with everything they had, the Council lines collapsed. Ships began to retreat. Then dozens of ships were fleeing. Then hundreds. The great Council armada that was supposed to crush the rebellion was running away in complete disorder, Sir Palmer reported from his station. "The Council fleet is in full retreat. They are abandoning the field. All Allied forces cease pursuit," Hayes ordered. "We have made our point. Let them run back to their core worlds and tell everyone what happened here." In the command center, there was a moment of stunned silence. Then cheering erupted. Officers and crew members from a dozen different species celebrated together. They had done what seemed impossible. They had defeated the Council's best effort to restore their empire. Catherine approached Hayes with tears in her eyes. "Jack, do you realize what this means? The Council is finished as a galactic power. They threw everything they had at us and we beat them. No species will ever fear them again." Hayes looked at the tactical display showing the retreating Council forces. "We did not just win a battle today," he said quietly. "We proved that freedom is stronger than tyranny. We proved that species working together can overcome any threat. We proved that the age of empires is over." President Morrison's image appeared on the screen again. "Commander Hayes, on behalf of Earth and the entire Free Worlds Alliance, I want to thank you. You have led us to victory and changed the course of galactic history." Hayes shook his head. "I did not do this, Madam President. Humanity did not do this alone. Every species that chose to fight for their freedom did this together. That is the lesson the Council never learned. Unity is strength, freedom is power, and people fighting for what they believe in will always defeat people fighting because they were ordered to." Over the following months, the Council's empire continued to crumble. More species declared independence. "Former client wo,"